In the meantime, the Reuters Jefferies commodity price index is up 23% so far this year. Gold, oil, copper have all been leading the way, though they are all trading lower today. Now, Jeffrey DeGraaf is a top-rated market technician and the head of technical analysis at ISI Group, and he joins us now with his perspective on these market trends. Jeff, welcome.
Thanks, Lori.
So are the charts supporting this overall bullish trend?
Absolutely. There's actually very few charts that we see from a trend perspective that would argue in favor of the bear market even having any semblance of an influence here.
So we're talking commodities, and in the break you were talking about reflation as being mostly factoring behind these gains. Can you talk more about that? Explain why this is the factor.
Yeah, I think it's important that we're not talking about reflation as in CPI, because it's totally different. You've got components there which are irrelevant, at least in the near term. You've got huge capacity utilization numbers that are low, obviously. But to us, it's a weak dollar. You've got commodities, which were actually turning a year ago, about 3 or 4 months before the market actually turned. You've got carry trades with various currencies, cheap borrow currencies versus high lending currencies, et cetera. So all these to us are, in fact, I have a hard time finding a chart that suggests that the reflation trade is not in play. And that's good for equities in the near term.
Well, you're saying that copper is posting a new high, Baltic freight's turning higher. What can you tell us about that?
So the relation, there's actually a pretty good relationship between China, the Baltic freight, and copper. Now, copper's high is a cyclical high, so it's the highest it's been off the lows. It's not at an all-time high, but it's certainly improving. The red line there.
We can see that on the chart. Tell us what we're looking at.
So the blue line is copper. It actually broke out yesterday, made a new high, so confirms this reflation or global growth theme, however you want to look at it. And then the red line is Baltic freight. Now, there's some issues with Baltic freight given the supply of ships that have come on the seas in the last year and a half or so. But still, it's moving higher, and these are confirming. So all this is good news. They're not moving away from each other or diverging. They're actually confirming the strength that we're seeing.
But what's reflation doing to energy prices?
Same thing.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So oil at a new high, and in fact, what we're seeing, which is good news, is that the stocks, the energy stocks, are actually starting to break out. And I'm not, now this is, you have to be careful with this, but I'm not in the camp that higher energy prices, we're not talking about 150, but let's call it 90, are going to be bad for stocks. I think actually what you're seeing at this point is as long as we have a modest trend, an uptrend in energy, that's going to be good for equities generally. Now, equities,
the energy related equities,
across
or just
the board.
Because of the
exactly across the board, because it's part of the reflation call. So if you look at energy stocks specifically, what you've seen is a modest uptick in the relative performance, which is really the one sector that started to improve here over the last 2 or 3 months that we think has some durability into the rent.
And we just saw that chart, NYMEX screwed up over 20% year to date. Not too bad.
No, not at all.
Can I ask you about gold?
You may.
You're so generous. Thank you. You had written that it's the only asset making secular highs.
Yeah.
Talk about what's driving gold and where you see the top in this cycle.
Well, you know, what's interesting about gold for us is that it's relatively fixed supply, right? Central banks can't create it. You have to go to the ground to mine it, and everything that's been mined is still out there. So you've got what's known as a vertical supply curve. From our perspective, it's very subtle. It's important that when you have an asset class trading at a new high, an all-time high, which stocks are not, oil's not, copper's not, the CRB's not, but gold is. There's usually an important message there. And so what it says to us, again, part of this reconfirmation of the reflation, more money chasing the goods and services that are out there, I think gold is in maybe the worst case scenario, the middle innings of a very long secular uptrend.
And Jeff, could I ask you in about 15 seconds, you bullish on stocks in the fourth quarter?
Yes.
Why?
Everyone's always bullish on stocks.
Well, that's part of it, but because of this reflation trade. If you took oil out, you took gold out, you started increasing the value of the dollar, I'd have some concerns. But historically speaking, we'd really be sitting up against the history books to be bearish on.
Is the Dow safe above 10,000 toward the end of the year?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Could we hit 11,000? How bullish are you?
I'm not such a Dow guy. I'm looking for 1150 by the end of the year on the S&P.
Okay.
And I think you stay above 1020 on the S&P by between now and year's end.
All right.
Thank you.
Very good.
Jeff DeGraaf. Jeff, thanks so much.